In an astounding display of economic suffering, 460,000 companies have shut their doors, displacing millions of people and contributing to a debt crisis that's left 800 million Chinese citizens struggling to make ends meet. With no obvious road forward, everyone is wondering whether China's once vibrant economy is now on the verge of a catastrophic collapse. As the world watches this crisis unfold with bated breath, one thing is certain: the stakes for China's economic juggernaut have never been higher. Prepare to be confronted with the harsh realities of China's economic future. Recent years have been difficult for China's economy due to factors like slowing income growth and a dramatic drop in consumer spending. Uncertainty created by frequent COVID-19 lockdowns keep the economy from growing to the government's desired 5.5% in 2022, despite record-breaking exports of $3.59 trillion and 7% export growth. Increasing exports and government investment stimulation aren't going to be enough for Chinese policymakers to jumpstart the economy. Public permission about the future may offset the beneficial impacts of export growth and government stimulus, preventing economic recovery if household underconsumption and sluggish income growth are not addressed fast. Chapter: China's Household Debt Challenge. Over the past 2 decades, Chinese household spending has been a strong growth driver, sustaining approximately 40% of China's GDP. With their salaries expected to rise, China's new middle class was eager to splurge on luxury items. For nearly 2 decades, from 2000 to 2019, China's economy grew by an average of 9% annually. Household consumption growth never slowed down until about 2017. Chinese household spending growth slowed to its slowest rate in a generation under President Xi Jinping's second term, falling from 6.7% during Xi's first term to 4% during his second term, well behind GDP growth. Chapter: COVID-19's effect on Chinese consumption and income growth. Since COVID-19 pandemic began, there has been a widening imbalance between the expansion of consumption and the expansion of GDP. Real per capita consumption in China rose at an average annual rate of 6.38% from 2013 to 2019 before the pandemic hit, 59 basis points below the average annual growth rate of 6.97% in real GDP. In the 2 following years of the pandemic, the difference widened to 170 basis points as GDP growth dropped to 4.5%, but consumption fell to 2.8%. Despite being the only major economy to have growth in 2020, Chinese household consumption witnessed the greatest fall in growth since the 90s, while the nominal annual family directionary income growth rated averaged 11.04% between 2001 and 2012. It is expected to dip to 8.39% between 2013 and 2022 under Xi administration policies. Chapter: Limits to export growth. China can't export its way to prosperity, and neither can it stimulate its way to growth. Increasing exports is crucial, but it will only help a little bit right now. After overtaking the US and Japan as the world's top exporters in 2009, China's proportion of global goods exported increased to 14.7% in 2020. Between 2016 and 2020, China's exports as a percentage of GDP will fall below 20% from a high of 36% in 2006. As China's GDP grows and supply chains shift outside of China, there's only a narrow margin for the exports to GDP ratio to rise, even if China could raise its service exports while maintaining its dominance in goods exports. Chapter: The problem with government stimulus. The Chinese government has relied on large stimulus packages to get the economy through rough patches for over a decade. In contrast, these have exacerbated local government debt during the past 14 years, tied financial stability to an unstable and sometimes corrupt property market, reduced fiscal headroom, and increased the amount of credit necessary to generate growth in order to respond to future crises. The Chinese central government actively urged provincial and municipal governments to accelerate infrastructure investment and public project funding under the Special Purpose Bonds program during the pandemic. In addition, the 30 trillion yuan stimulus in 2021 and the 37.5 trillion yuan stimulus in 2020, Bloomberg calculated that China's stimulus through different financial and monetary support amounts to roughly 35.7 trillion yuan by the end of May 2022. Chapter: The shift in emphasis towards household consumption. The Chinese government made the right choice the last year when it shifted its focus to private spending as the primary driver of economic recovery. 2 very important government reports on personal consumption were released recently. In April 2022, the State Council published opinions on unleashing consumption potential and promoting sustained consumption recovery. The research provided local governments with implementation guidance, which included 20 strategies to increase consumption across 5 categories. Although investment is recognised as being crucial, the framework for the first time prioritised expanding household consumption over effective investment as a long-term plan. China's economic strategy since 1978 has been focused on exports, but recent policy announcements indicate a change towards prioritising family consumption. A system of financial repression favouring export and state-led investments above consumption and forced savings have been in place in China since Deng Xiaoping. Commercial banks, controlled by the government, serve as the backbone of the oppressive financial system. Since 2010, the rise of Chinese households' net assets has been slowing, and this trend has further accelerated due to the pandemic. Mortgage loans account for 75.9% of total household debt, indicating that most of this wealth is concentrated in China's increasingly unstable property market. The debt of Chinese families as a percentage of GDP rose from 17.9% in 2008 to 61.9% in 2022. With the ratio peaking at 62.4% in September 2021, higher household debt operates as a strong drag on consumption. Additionally, the growth in household debt has outpaced that of household income. The biggest problem facing the Chinese government is getting discouraged Chinese families to contribute to economic growth by increasing their household consumption. China has experienced significant economic growth in recent decades, but like any economy, it may experience periods of slower growth or even a downturn. If China does face an economic downturn, there are several steps that it could take to help address the situation. Firstly, China could work to increase its domestic consumption. This would involve encouraging its citizens to spend more money on goods and services within the country. China has a large population and a growing middle class, so there is significant potential for domestic consumption to drive economic growth. To achieve this, China could invest in education and healthcare to improve the standard of living of its citizens, which would increase their disposable income and encourage them to spend more. Secondly, China could focus on developing its service sector. Currently, China's economic is heavily reliant on manufacturing and exports. By developing its service sector, China could create new industries and job opportunities which would help to drive economic growth. This could involve investing in sectors such as finance, healthcare, and technology. Thirdly, China could look to strengthen its international trade relationships. China is already a major player in global trade, but it could work to expand its exports to other markets and increase its imports of high-quality goods and services. To achieve this, China could focus on improving the quality and innovation of its products and work to establish strong trade relationships with other countries. Finally, China could invest in infrastructure and technology. By building new infrastructure and investing in new technologies, China could create new industries and job opportunities which would help to drive economic growth. This could involve investing in sectors such as renewable energy, transportation and telecommunications. Overall, there are several steps that China could take to address an economic downturn. By investing in its domestic consumption, developing its service sector, strengthening international trade relationships, and investing in infrastructure and technology, China could potentially overcome any economic challenges it may face. That's it for today. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. We'll see you in the next one.